Ghost Cat number 4. The I know this word, I just don't think I've ever seen it before. Ominous? The ominous drip of rotten wood under Annabelle's cautious foot sent her over the door sill, onto the sounder flooring in a hasty stride. It was as if the house had given her a little nudge to hurry her inside. She was in a kitchen. An old-fashioned wood stove squatted against the opposite wall. On another wall, a sink topped by a once red, plump shared space with a mammoth floor-to-ceiling cupboard. Ancient linoleum, robbed of color by dust and time, covered the floor. Yuck! Donna snatched her hand away from the rusted tea kettle sitting on the stove and wiped a smear of cobwebs off the seat of on the seat of her jeans. If there's a ghost here, it doesn't do housekeeping. Despite her giggle, her voice was hushed as if, like Annabelle, she was troubled by a sense of trespassing where the penalty might be unthinkable if they were caught. Annabelle clasped her hands behind her, wanting to touch nothing. Michael tugged open one of the glass-painted doors of the cupboard. "What's in here? Just dishes?" "What's left of them," Todd chuckled. "That summer I first found out about this place, Uncle Jack and his kids, Greg and Chuck, were up here from Florida for the week, and we used these old dishes for target shooting with Chuck's air rifle." His voice was not all that hushed. "You didn't," Donna said, shocked. "How do you know they weren't valuable antiques? You might have sold them for a fortune." She pointed to a round oak table by the window. "It's just like that table our mom hunted in about 100 antique stores to find. And Dad practically has a coronary when he found out how much it cost. Well, she probably could have had this one for free." Todd grinned. Dang it. Hey, I'm not on key this morning. I'm trying to get the reading done before dialysis, as I don't think I'm going to feel like doing it after. And I really just want to talk to the camera for a while. Right. So Todd said this. "She could have probably had this one for free," Todd grinned. "Unless maybe the ghost of Julia Craig would have wrestled her for it." He squinted up at Annabelle, smirking. "How about it? Getting any psychic vibes up there, Clarabelle?" "If you're speaking to me," she said icily. "The name's Annabelle. Maybe when you get bigger, you'll be able to remember." She turned her back on him and made a show of going to see what lay beyond the half-open door across the room. It was a bedroom, stripped to its barest essentials. An unadorned dresser of dark wood and a bed, the mattress covered by a drab quilt, were its sole furnishings. Not even a rug on the floor. "What's this?" Donna asked, peering round Annabelle's shoulder. "The spare room?" "Maybe," Annabelle agreed. "It must be. She didn't have people overnight very often." Donna wrinkled her nose. "Grim. I'll bet she served them bread and water if they did come." Annabelle nodded, but the word she would have used was sad rather than grim. She tried to imagine the room as it looked when the stained and peeling paper was in an unbroken pattern of rosebuds and ribbons on the wall, and the crocheted lace that edged the decaying curtains was fresh and white. Someone must have taken pains here to make it pretty. Why didn't they finish? Michael squeezed past her to carry out a drawer-by-drawer inspection of the dresser. Empty, he reported. Not even one old sock. They filed back through the kitchen into the dining room, where 2 chairs lay overturned, one of them broken, while 2 others sat primarily upright at the table, or primly upright at the table. A shattered lamp lay in a stain of dust gas. A scattered lamp lay in a stain of dust-grimmed kerosene on the rag carpet. People have been in here rummaging around, Donna said indignantly. I bet they walked off with lots of stuff. Why not? It's no good just sitting here, Todd scuffed. Todd scuffed his boot across the seat of a fallen chair to rid the sole of splintered glass. If Grandpa cared, he'd have kept the place locked, or else cart the stuff off himself. Michael snickered, heading for the next room. But maybe he thinks the ghost of Julia Craig would care. They were in the front room now, Julia Craig's living room. Crocheted dollies adorned the arms and backs of 2 upholstered chairs and a sofa. Tufts of dingy stuffing stuck out of the holes in the cushions. Moth holes peppered the carpet. Annabelle's eyes was caught by a work basket beside the high-backed rocking chair. A mother-of-pearl button was skewered to a pin cushion by a threaded needle, suggesting the sewer meant to return shortly with the garment needing repair. Another basket sat nearby on the windowsill. It was just the right size, and the pillow in it dented just the right way to accommodate a curled-up cat. Beneath the layers of dust were the hairs on that pillow of the same silver gray as the cat in the woods, Macduff. The sense of, it didn't, it sure didn't, I didn't think it was a question that was coming. Beneath the layers of dust, there were hairs on the pillow of the same silvery gray as the cat in the woods, Macduff. The sense of trespassing returned like cold fingers on the nape of her neck. Hey, look! Michael snapped a picture of the tall clock on the shelf. 5:25. I bet it stopped the hour Julia Craig disappeared. Why not, if she never came back to wind it? You don't think it would keep running forever by itself, do you? Todd scoffed. Michael covered his chagrin by stating for the clock, I wonder if it still runs. No, I don't. The words escaped Annabelle before she could think. No, don't. The words escaped Annabelle before she could think. She couldn't have told what her objection was, except for a premonition that to rouse the old clock would be a mistake. Don't touch it, Donna echoed her. That thing's filthy, with cobwebs and probably full of spiders besides. Leave it alone, Michael. She opened the door to an adjoining room. Oh, look! Here's the real bedroom. Clothes and books and everything. Their attention was diverted from the clock immediately. Todd and Michael crowded in ahead of Annabelle, but she had a clear view over their heads of a neatly made bed, a checkered apron folded over a chair, a painting of a mountain village in winter on the wall. Curiosity drew her to the dresser. A pair of black cotton gloves, neatly darned, lay alongside 2 hairbrushes, a comb, and a lacquer box containing a big bone-colored hairpins. Pins for gray hair, or blonde? Annabelle wondered. What had Julia Craig looked like? Was it her personality or lack of beauty that had turned Great-Grandpa Oscar off? Michael pulled a manila envelope out of a bookshelf. "Hey, neat! Old snapshots and negatives," he said, pulling out a handful to examine by the window. "This is my kind of stuff." Annabel followed to bend over his shoulder as he began shuffling through his find. Strange to think, if one were of Julia Craig, they wouldn't know how to recognize her. "Lots of clothes in here," Donna announced, lifting a yellow cotton slip from a drawer. "Wait, what's—" She broke off with a shriek and leapt backwards into Annabel's arms. They crashed together into Michael, clutching each other, partly for balance and partly in panic. "It moved!" Donna gasped. "I saw something move!" Todd shot a burst of profanity at them. "Just a mouse nest." He scooped a pile of folded clothing from the drawer and strode out. "I'll take care of them." The thin squeaks of baby's mice brought Annabel to her senses. "No, wait, don't!" she cried after him. Her rush to unscramble herself from Donna and Michael sent her tumbling over the chair and lost her precious time. She got no further than the front room before the tread of Todd's boots returning proclaimed his mission accomplished. "What did you do with them?" she demanded. He flexed his shoulders carelessly. "Took them out and stepped on them. What else?" She fought back the urge to throw up. "You could have left them where they were. They weren't doing any harm." "Oh, wow," Todd groaned. "Don't tell me we got a Bambi lover." He struck a pose, hands clasped and eyes rolled heavenward. "Animals is willy sweet will people with fur coats, and we should love them like letters. Their lives are as important to them as yours is to you." Oh, sorry. Different speaker coming here. "Their lives are as important to them as yours is to you," she said hotly. He laughed. "No way." And he wasn't clowning anymore. "Listen, Clarabelle, just because you're built like an ox, don't get the idea you swing any weight around here. If our way don't grab you, there's nothing says we'll miss you if you split." She couldn't let herself be hurt by such crudities. But even while her fingers twitched to shake him by the collar of his fancy western shirt, the retort she ought to spit at him wedged crosswise in her throat. "Thanks, I'm glad too," was the best she could manage. She snatched at a door she supposed led outside. Instead, she found herself at the foot of a flight of stairs. The mockery in Todd's laugh drove her on up them, two at a stride without a second thought. Before she gained the top, she was stooping almost double beneath the slope of the roof. No one above 5 feet tall could have done otherwise. She was in the attic. To get to where she could stand without hitting her head on a rafter, she had to cross nearly a third of the rough plank floor. Dust as thick as a carpet muted her footsteps. Queer how the brooding quiet of this house made her want to tiptoe, as if she feared to wake someone or something. Her breath stopped as a flicker of movement caught in her eye. Her breath stopped as a flicker of movement caught her eye. But it was only herself, a girl with tumbled dark hair and a sunburnt nose, reflected in a murky mirror that leaned against the chimney. The place held the usual attic clutter of boxes, discarded bric-a-brac, and oddments of furniture. 2 wide bookcases of brick and plank construction stood together to shoulder to shoulder beside the thick stone column of the chimney. Oh, my heavens. I don't know why I was so into this book in sixth grade. Seventh grade. I like her next book better. Gee, I hope it's... Okay. Shh. Two wide bookshelves of brick and plank construction stood shoulder to shoulder beside the thick stone column of the chimney, one of them lower than the other to accommodate the slope of the roof. What was perhaps a wardrobe, its backside to the room for some reason, filled the remaining space between them and the outer wall. The dust of decades lay undisturbed on everything. Annabel had no intention of lingering up here, but she hesitated to go down while Todd might still be watching to jeer at her mistake. Maybe it would do no harm to spend a minute reading some of the titles that crowded the bookshelves. The sun had broken through the clouds again. It laid an inviting beam, almost cheerful, across a section of the books by way of the small gable window. She tiptoed nearer a row of faded spines, prepared to discover what? Tomes on black magic, perhaps? Or dark philosophies? Certainly anything but the well-worn old acquaintances to meet her eyes. A child's garden of verses. Winnie the Pooh. The house at the Pooh Corner. Raggedy Ann and Andy. A whole series of those. The Secret Garden. Black Beauty. The Five Little Puppers. Little Lord Fauntleroy. And dozens more. It was a child's library. And one that showed the signs of having been much read. How did this fit into the picture of the embittered old maid school teacher that was Julia Craig? Many of these books Annabel had read. Others she had heard of but never happened on, like the Blue Fairy book, nestled between Tom Sawyer and Little Women. Poor thing. It wasn't blue any more in a nondescript gray, but a nondescript gray. Annabel squatted on her heels for a closer view. Her instinct was strong as ever to touch nothing, to leave as little imprint of herself as possible in this house. How then the book got from the shelf into her hands, she was never sure, but it was just there. The pages flopped open by themselves as if eager to be read again. For within an hour's time there grew up all around the park such a vast number of trees and small bushes and brambles twining within another. Neither man nor beast could pass through. She read on, intrigued to discover that this book... She read on, intrigued to discover that in this book the mother of Sleeping Beauty's prince ate little children. "Hey, Clarabelle!" Todd's jeer from below scraped her nerves like sandpaper. "We're going, Clarabelle! Bye-bye, Clarabelle!" She sprang up, slamming the book shut. Anger swept Anger swept away her qualms about disrupting the quiet. "The name is Annabel!" She emptied her lungs into the shout. "Annabel Lee Peterson!" There was a sudden stillness. Even the dust motes lazily afloat in the sunlight froze when they were there. Froze where they were. It was like a breath-holding instant before a thunderclap. But there was no thunder, only a soft, drawn-out sigh. It could have been the old house settling, except that it sounded like a whispery echo. Annie. I stood up too fast. I shouted too hard. she tried to tell herself. But something fundamental in her knew that wasn't the answer. Knew it before she saw the suspended motes begin to revolve, spiraling more dust up into a miniature whirlwind that thickened and grew and advanced. For a second she couldn't move. When she did wrench her legs into action, the stairway seemed to have receded 100 yards. She hardly felt the low beam that grazed her head as she hurled herself down the steps. The door at the bottom stood open. She banged it shut behind her and fled through the parlor, the dining room, and into the kitchen. There, she had to stop her breath. Todd, Donna, Michael, where were they? The door to the porch, left open while they were in the house, was closed now. And someone had set the clock going in the parlor after all. Its measured ticking reached through the house. Weak, faint stirrings were here, there, where there had been only musty silence. A tendril of hair fluttered against her damp temple, and the ancient curtains in the windows billowed briefly in the dead air. She seized the doorknob. It turned loosely in her grip without budging the door. In the depths of the house, another latch clicked, and hinges creaked. The attic door? She grasped the knob in both hands and yanked. It pulled off at her fist, dragging the door inward, a bare crack. "Annie," the voice whispered, sighed around her again. Not the shifting, sagging beams, a breathy, questing whisper. "Annie." Ooh, that's fucking scaring me. Woo, 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 woo. Hey, get used to it. Some of my books are quite frightening. I'd really read them all for you. Annabelle dug her nails into the edge of the door and tore it open. The wrought sill gave way under her foot. Her heel plunged ankle deep into a trap of jagged splinters. As the house, the presence in the house, sought one last means to hold her, her sneaker was left still prisoner as she jerked free. She didn't stay to rescue it. The whisper, anguished, angry, appealing, pursued across the pine needle yard, past the laden lilac tree. "Annie!" She lurched on at a limping run, in one stockinged foot and one sneaker, until she could hear nothing but her own gasping for breath. The hazel thicket rose before her, promising the logging trail. The hazel thicket rose before her, promising the logging trail and the way out of the woods. There was the log Todd sat on, the discarded paper bag that held cookies. "Donna," she called. "Michael!" Please let them come bustling out of hiding to tell her she was the butt of a nasty joke. She wouldn't mind their laughter. She would welcome their jeers. "Todd?" No one answered, and she did not wait to call again. Panting, she pushed into the thicket. It was harder to steer a straight course going back than it had been with a clearing ahead to aim for. The brush was higher than she remembered, the branches thicker and more resolutely crisscrossed in a wickerwork, all that but defied passage. Neither did she recall there had been so many mosquitoes earlier. They swarmed around her. The air fairly shimmered in tiny moving bodies. Their mean, high whine was everywhere. She brushed a cluster of them from the side of her face, and she was surprised to feel a sticky welt above her temple. A smear of dark blood came. Blah, 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 blah. No, like nobody will watch the video this far. But if you do, I'm just a person. A smear of dark blood came away on her fingers. For the first time she realized there was a throbbing ache where she had struck her head in her flight from the attic. Memory spurred her to struggle against the wailing greenery more frantically than before, and at last she fought through to the trail. But the trail, too, had changed. Was it this faint? This narrow? Jesus, crubbity crew. This narrow? This thickly overgrown an hour ago? Pine boughs raked her hair like coarse combs, pulling, snarling it. Squadrons of mosquitoes launched themselves from beneath strands of fern to attack her shoeless foot. Sapling wands grew in the path and snapped back like whips when she bent them out of the way. Still, she forged desperately on until a clump of birch, 5 big trunks growing tightly together, blocked the track completely. She knew beyond question that she had passed no such barrier when she came. Steady down, don't panic, she told, the wild thudding in her chest. So you mistook a deer track for something for the trail. Just follow it back and start over. But when she turned to retrace her steps, the path was gone. Nowhere in the undergrowth was there a break that appeared to lead anywhere. In the direction she was about to choose, loops of thorny blackberry vines fenced her off as effectively as barbed wire. That line from the fairy tale book slid into her mind. Within an hour's time there grew up all around the park such a vast number of trees and small bushes and brambles twining one within another. That fairy tale in which the old queen ate young people for dinner. Annabelle set her teeth in her lower lip to control it. I won't panic. It's not like I'm lost in a trackless wilderness. The farm can't be too far away. Aunt Little and Uncle Axel will be hunting for me the minute I show up missing. There, she sniffed, listening. Was that a distant voice shouting her name, shouting Annabelle? Or was it she held her breath to hear a voice calling Annie? Annabelle whirled and bolted in the opposite direction. She had no idea how far she'd run, nor how long, nor when it began to rain. The patter of raindrops on leaves had been going on almost forever when exhaustion dropped her at last onto a water-slicked rock the size of a tabletop. With a shiver she saw it was very like a rock she had passed a little while ago. She thought of her fancy that the cat this morning was compelled by some baleful enchantment to wander in an endless circle that never quite let him escape these woods. Hang on to your wits, don't panic, she reminded herself. You're too big to cry. A dog howled somewhere, at no great distance, and she shrank into a heap of knotted arms and drawn up legs. Next instant she was on her feet. There was a dog. There would be people. Please, dog, keep howling, she begged silently as she stumbled over tree roots and around deadfalls, following the sound. Don't anyone shut him up or chase him away. She could almost believe it was Ricky, howling as he was inclined to do when someone hooked him on his chain. But that would be too good to be true. Yet it was true. Incredibly, as she climbed the top of a slope, she glimpsed the barn ahead through the trees. She lost sight of it on the downward side of the slope, but that didn't matter. She now knew where she was going. If she could get there. All at once she was surrounded by blackberry brambles. Wicked thorns caught a hold of her jeans. Others stabbed the heel of her unprotected foot when she was trying to back off. She couldn't go forward or to either side. It was then that she heard the cat cry behind her. Annabelle screamed, "Help! Somebody please help!" "That you, girl?" The answer came from close by. "Over here, or come this way." She lunged, heedless of the briars, and somehow the barrier melted away, becoming a jumble of harmless weeds and stalks and seedling pines. Then she was clear of the woods and clinging to old Pop, who wrapped her in arms surprisingly strong for all they trembled. Surprisingly strong for all that they trembled slightly. She pressed her face against his rain-soaked sweater, oblivious to how silly it looked for big girls to cry, while Ricky, crying at the farthest limit of his chains, continued to howl dismally at the trees. Woo! End of chapter 4. Need a break.